Hi everyone, welcome to another session of the .NET Core Web APIs. In this session, basically, we will learn how to connect our .NET Core Web APIs with your SQL Server database. Okay, how we can do the CRUD operations with the database. In the last session, we already learned about how to create the GET API, POST API, PUT API, Patch API, and Delete APIs. Now, uh, in that APIs, we were using the in-memory database. What is the in-memory database? In-memory database means whatever data we are returning to the UI or the caller of your web API, we are just returning as a hard-coded information in a dictionary, right? So instead of hard coding that data into your API project, we will check how to get that data from the database, how to store your data into the database. Why we require to do that? Because a database will help you to keep your information permanently on your disk, so that later also if you visit to your account or that website or our product, then whatever data you have stored into our application, you will get that information anytime, anywhere. Okay. As long as you are calling our APIs, you are accessing our application, you can access the information as well. So that's why, in order to keep your information permanently stored somewhere on the disk, we will require the database. So how to communicate with the database from the web APIs, that is something we are going to learn here. So let me start the Visual Studio first, and we will open the same project where we have created few controllers. Okay, let me open that. Okay, so this is the Visual Studio where if you see here, we have created couple of APIs. So this is the Solution Explorer. Here we have created two different APIs. One is for book controller, second is for author controller. Okay, and the models for these two APIs we have created in the models folder. Why we require the controller? So controller will basically help you to create the APIs. One controller will have the APIs related to the controller entity. Okay, you can see the controller name is book. So whatever APIs we want to write for the book controller, we can write into the book controller.cs class. Okay, so these are the APIs. What are API we have created so far is, first is get API. So here this API will help you to get the list of books. Okay, then we have created another API, that is get book info. This is also HTTP get, and it will return you the information about your current book. And we are again having another get API which will accept the ID of your book. Okay, so if you pass the ID, it should retrieve the details about your book. Okay, detailed information about your book. Then we have created one more API. If you pass two different parameters like category and ID from the parameters, then we should use these two parameters in order to query to your database, and that will help you to retrieve and filter the data by their ID and their category. And this is both for the creating a new book record in the database. Okay, so we will just remove all these APIs and we will do the CRUD operation with the books entity. Okay, by using the entity framework. So this get we will require. Get will basically get the list of all the books. I don't think we require this get book info, but we will require this get book info by ID. Okay, we will keep this API and we will remove everything. Save also we can keep. Other than that, we will remove everything. We don't require anything else. So this is just an informative purpose we have learned, like how to create the endpoint or web API in the controller class. Okay, and make sure whatever controller class you are creating, it should be stick with only one entity. If you know the solid principle, so S stands for single responsibility. Every class should have single responsibility. So book controller is a controller which will have the responsibility to manage the books. That's it, nothing else. Okay, we are having one more class, that is author class. So author class will have another responsibility to manage the author entity. Any operation related to the author entity, we can manage into the author class. Okay, so this is the single responsibility. That's why book controller will have only APIs which are related to the books. Okay. Now I wanted to create one database which will have book table. In that table, we should have some columns like book ID, book name, book author, book price, and few more book category, whether it is drama or original book or any other books. Okay. So for that, we will use entity framework core code first approach. Okay. Entity framework core has three different approaches. One is code first, model first, and database first. I will tell you the difference. Code first means you will have to write the code first. Okay. In your project, you will have to write the source code, and if you run your project or run some commands in the package manager console, it will create the database for you. Also, it will create the tables and its columns with the relationship in the database. So basically, by using the C# code, you will create the database automatically, even though you do not have any knowledge about your SQL Server database. Okay. So as a programmer, you are not a database developer. If you are pure object oriented programmer and you want to play with the database or you want to work with the database, still you can work without having a knowledge with the database by using the code first approach of the entity framework. Okay. So I will prefer that approach only because most of the MNC companies or IT companies are using code first approach. Okay. Because it is very developer friendly, because developer mostly has a knowledge about the object oriented programming, right? And if you have the database, if you have a way to communicate with the database or do some database operations in a form of object oriented, in that case you will be definitely uh, learn or learn the database technology very quickly because it is in your own language, and you can play you can do the operations with the database very easily, very minimal knowledge of the database. Okay. So that's why we will just use the entity framework code first approach. What is entity framework? Entity framework is one of the package which will which is the ORM framework. ORM, object relationship management mapping, sorry, object relationship mapping. By using the ORM, you can communicate with the database, you can fetch the records from the database, you can store the records into the database, you can do the CRUD operation, you can do the DML operation, DDL operation, everything. Okay. Using the entity framework code first approach. Then again, one more advantage is uh, if you use the ADO.NET. ADO.NET is one more framework of the .NET which will help you to communicate with the database, but that is manual. Manual means if you paste some record, let's say I have one book table, right? Let me open one notepad. Okay. Let's say I have one book table, TBL book. So it can have ID, name, then price, author ID, then let's say category. These are the table columns available into book table. And in your C#, you are having one class. We will definitely require one entity class in order to map all the columns with your C# properties. So we are having book class. Okay. So this book class has all these properties like uh, public, string, sorry, int, book ID. Okay. And gets it. We can call these are the basically POCO classes. Okay. So POCO classes will help you to transfer the data from one location to another location. Or we can call this as a DTO object, data transfer object. Okay, it will help you to map the fields, transfer the data from one function to another function. Okay, so this is your class book having ID as a field property. Another property is name. Okay, and name can be string, right? So that's why string and so on. So just assume we are having all these properties. Now If you are using in ADO.NET, then you will have to map these properties manually. How to map it? Whatever value we are having in the ID column should be copied to the book ID property of the book class. So that thing you will have to map manually like this. So book ID is equal to data reader dot data reader of ID. So this is how you have to map, okay, manually. Not only this property, but also all the properties, book name, author ID, price, category, everything. You will have to map each and every property manually, and then it will, you can use it into your program. But if you use the entity framework, this mapping will also automatically done. That's why we are calling it as a ORM, object relation mapping. So every object and its relation will map with the C# object and the columns of your table. That will automatically happen. You don't have to worry about it. How to do that? I will tell you. Okay. So let's go back to Visual Studio. Okay. So this is your Visual Studio. In the Visual Studio, now let's configure the entity framework first. Then create one new database. How to configure the connection string. How to do the migrations. Everything we will now see. So let me do first thing. So very first thing is you will have to install some packages in order to start working with the entity framework. Okay. So which packages you will have to use? Yeah. Go to the package manager console here. Right click. See what we are doing. We are configuring the entity framework in our project. Okay. Why we are configuring it? Because to communicate with the database, we will require entity framework. So our first step should be install the entity framework related packages. Okay, so I will go into the manage NuGet package option. In this, go to the browse tab. Okay, this is wizard based and you can also do the command line. If you know the package commands, how to install them, you can use it in package manager console. And second thing is, if you don't want to use that console, you can use the wizard base as well. Here you will see all the packages. Okay, you have to be connected with the internet. So if you are with the connected with the internet, you can just download the packages. You can see Microsoft Entity Framework Core. Okay, let's install 7 because I am having .NET 7. So first of all, check your project version. Okay, you can see we are using .NET 7. So we can use .NET Framework, Entity Framework Core 7.0. Okay, and just install it and click on accept. Okay, so we have installed .NET Framework Core. Now I need to install which database we want to use. There are several types of DB technologies, like we can use Oracle, we can use MS SQL, we can use MySQL, PostgreSQL, so many other databases, right? So for now, we will use MS SQL. So if you want to communicate with the MS SQL, you will have to install the second package. What is the package name? Microsoft.entity framework core.sql server. Okay, so same thing again, go here, change it to 7.14, 0.14, click on install. Okay, great. So you have installed entity framework core, you have installed entity framework SQL server. Now if you want to do the migrations, if you want to use the commands which provided by entity framework core, you will have to install one more package, that is Microsoft Entity Framework Core.tools. Okay, we require these packages in order to do the migration. You can see the commands here: add migration, bundle migration, drop the database, get the database context, get the migrations. So all these things we can do just because of this package. So just install that package as well by changing the version to 7.0. Click on the install. Okay, click on I accept. See, what we done is we have just installed three different packages so far. Okay, why we need that? I just explained. Okay, we require this base package, we require this MS SQL because I wanted to use MS SQL database, and we install these tools because I wanted to do the migrations. What is migration, why it requires, I will tell you further. So let's close it. Now we are here. Okay, this is your chproc file where you can see what are all packages you have installed in your project. So we have installed these many packages so far. Okay, great. Let's close it. Come here. What should be the next step? So next step should be just design the database structure. Okay, we have installed the required packages. Now I wanted to design my database structure. What are all things I require in my database? That is what we need to design. So let's do one by one. I require two tables. One is author table, one is book table. Okay, so that's why first of all, if your project do not have any models folder, just create that. Okay, once you create the model folder, make sure you are creating the entity class for each of your tables. I am having, I want book table, so that's why I created the entity class for book table. So every table will have its own entity class. Okay, I want two tables, right? So let me design the schema in the notepad. I want book table which will have these many properties. I want author table as well. Okay, and it will have another columns like id and name. That's it. Okay, so we will have two tables having the foreign key and primary key relationship. You can see author table has only two columns. Primary key will be id and name will be the name of the author. Now we will add this primary key as a reference to the book table as a foreign key. You can see author id here. Okay, so this is the one to many relationship. One author can have many books. Okay, great. So we will require two models as of now. One is book table, second is author table. So for book, we can create the model class or entity class in the models folder. I have created this class, book class. Okay, now in your book class, what are all columns you want to configure? What are all columns you want to create? What should be the data type for each and every column? Is there any foreign key and primary key relationship? So all these questions will come in your mind, and we need to design the database accordingly by using this model class. So I want to create ID column, right? ID, capital I. So that column is already there with the return type is integer, not return type but data type. Data type is integer. So ID column should be my primary key. It should have the integer value. It should be unique and it should be auto incremental. So that's why we will add one more attribute here, that is key. Okay, so this key data annotation will help you to make your column as a primary key. In order to use this attribute, you will have to add one more reference, that is this system.component annotations. This will help you to make any column which you want as a primary key with auto incremental functionality. Okay, that's why key. If you don't add the key here, then from your entity class, any column having return type is data type is integer and having id keyword in their name, which will become default primary key. Got it? So if you forgot to mention the key data annotation to any of the column here, it will automatically consider id as a primary key. So this is optional. If your column name has id and you want to keep it as a primary key, you don't have to explicitly mention the key data annotation, because entity framework knows that if your property name has a id keyword and it has the integer data type, it means this is your primary key. Okay, this is optional if your database having the id column. Okay, next thing is name. I want book name as well, right? So book name should be string and it should be nullable. What is nullable? Nullable means if you don't put any book name, then it will throw the exception, but it will not throw the exception, it will just accept the null value. So string has a default value that is null, that's why I make it nullable. Next is price. So price can be in a double, right? Double means fractional number we can have in the price, like 10.15. Okay, so that's why we just keep it as a double. Next is author id. Author id means it is a primary key of your author table, but as of now we do not have that author table. So our responsibility is to create author table first and then come to the book table, because we wanted to add the reference of your author table into the book table. So author table should be created first, right? So what I will do, I will go here, right click, add new item, class, and then here we will add author. Okay, now you can see we have added author table, author class. In the author class we can just add two properties, one is id and second one is name. Okay, and this name should be nullable, that's why question mark. Now you can add the reference of your author table into the book table. How to add the reference? First of all, you will have to add one property which is author id. Okay, and it should be integer obviously, because id can be integer. Okay, and how to make the foreign key and primary key relationship between these two tables, like this, public. Okay, here just add your class name, author, it can be nullable, and here add a virtual keyword. Okay, and change the name to author. So what will happen, whenever you will fetch the records from the book table, it will make a join to the author table and will also get the author entity into this property with the help of this foreign key. And we need to just mention one more data annotation here, foreign key author id, like this. Now what will happen, like this, what will happen, if you page the record from the book will check the foreign key id of the author table, will make the internal join to the author table, fetch the record for author, and bind that value to this object. So that way you will have the author information as well along with your book record. Okay, this is how we can uh, make the one-to-many relationship between the databases by using the entity framework. Okay, this is the interview question, how to make the one-to-many relationship, or how to add the foreign key reference of another table into current table by using entity framework code first approach. So we should be able to tell them by using the foreign key data annotation. We should have one integer property having foreign key id, and we should have one more object of the another table as a property, which will help you to bind the data into that property. Okay, and this is your key. Even though it is optional, I will just write this so you can understand why we have added here, and it will become the primary key. Okay, so whatever data annotations we are adding here now, so that will be above the property. Okay, if I add something here, it means it is for the right immediately below line. Okay, so this author property has this annotation, this id has this annotation, this name does not have any annotation, price does not have any annotation. We can also call it as an attribute. Okay, not only annotation, and this also does not have any annotation, but we added the reference of this property into the author property by using the foreign key data annotation or attribute. Okay, great. So we have designed a book table as well as we have designed the author table. This is your author table. Just add key here for your understanding purpose. It is completely optional, and this does not require any foreign key reference. So there is no foreign key here, but we have added foreign key here. So this is one-to-one relationship. Great. Now we have the database schema ready. Okay, we are having two tables which we wanted to create in the database, and these two tables I wanted to add into the database. So our next step should be create the DB context class. Okay, that is very important class. DB context class will help you to replicate the whole database. It will just basically refers the schema of your whole database. What are all tables available into your database? What are all columns available into your tables? Is there any relationship between your tables? Is there any indexes applied to your table? So all these things we will write inside the DB context class. So right click here, add class, just add DB context. You can give any name. Okay, only don't give d small b, because small b DB context, this class already there in the entity framework package. So that's why whatever name you will give here, that should not be available in the entity framework package or any existing library. So I will give library DB context class. Okay, add. So this is your DB context class. It is very important class. This is just, you can just consider this is your database. This class is nothing but your database. So carefully design this. If you just miss one thing, it will just not, you will not able to connect with your database. First thing first, this class should be inherited from the DB context class. As I mentioned earlier, this class already available into the entity framework core package, and that's why we need to inherit this class into our custom DB context class. Okay, this is your child class. Now whatever tables you want to create in your database, you can just register them into this class. Okay, this can be a possibility, like in models folder you are having 10 different classes like books, authors, customer, student, teacher, class, college. Okay, you can have many classes, but in your database you only wanted to create two tables, books and author. You don't want to create all the tables. So if we add the classes here, it is not something it will create the tables. Okay, you can add any number of classes here, it will not create those classes or tables into the database. But whatever tables you want to register into your database, you can add them into DB context class like this, DB set. Okay, and then mention your class name, that is author, right? And then you can give the name to your table. I want to give like TBL author, authors. Okay, TBL means table authors. This name I wanted to give, so just created the DB context, DB set property for your table. So this line will help you to create the table with this name into your database, and this table will have the properties. What are the property? Sorry, will have the columns which are mentioned inside this class. Got it? So this table will have these many columns like this. Got it? This is your database. This database is having authors table. Authors table is having these properties. This is your primary key. Okay. So what we are doing, by using the program, programmatically we are designing the database. Okay. As a programmer, developer, programmatically we are designing the database. Even though you do not have any knowledge about the database, you can work with the database. So this is the beauty of your entity framework. So what we done here is we have just added one table into your database. Now I wanted to add one more table, obviously, that is your books table. So we can add the book table like this. Okay, TBL books. Okay, great. So we have created one database that is called as library DB. In that database, we have created two tables, TBL authors, TBL books, and every table has its own column list here. Okay, author has these 2 columns, book has these 5 columns, 4 columns. Okay, what is next? Next is configure the constructor here. Okay, public library context. So this is your constructor of your DB context class. Why we require this? Oh, not constructor actually. We need to override one of the function from this DB context class. What is the function name? Let me add the override keyword here first. Void override. Function name is on configuring. On configuring. Public override void on configuring. This is the function which is available inside the parent class in this class, and this function takes uh, one parameter, that is db context option builder. Db context option builder. Okay, so this will be your option builder. And now just write the overridden definition here. So this will allow you to register the DB technology like this: option builder, option builder. Okay, option builder dot. I want to connect with MS SQL, Microsoft SQL. So I will use SQL, use SQL server, and then you will have to provide your connection string. Okay, this is the one way. Okay, and second thing, what we can do, we can register this use SQL and everything inside the startup.cs file or program.cs file. So that is also that will also fine. So let me check if we can do that way. Okay, so in your DB context file, okay, in your DB context file, we will not write this. This is another way actually. We can do like this, as well as we can directly register into the program.cs. I will go with the standard way. Okay, here we will just do one thing. We will just add one constructor, parameterized constructor, library context. Okay, and this takes one argument, that is DB context option. DB context options. Okay, these options I just wanted to pass to my base constructor. Base constructor obviously is your this class, DB context class. Okay, so we need to pass these options to your base controller. That's why we have explicitly added this parameterized constructor here. That's it. You don't have to do anything here. Just leave this file now. Okay. Now next step is write the connection string in the app setting.json file. This file. I will give the introduction of this file. So basically, this file will help you to configure the variables, configure the values which you want to change as per your environment later. Later means after deployment, during deployment, after compilation of your project. Okay. So whatever value you want to make it as a configurable variables, you can just register or add them into this file. Okay. So I wanted to add the DB connection string. Why I wanted to keep it as a configurable? Because let's say I'm working with my local database. Local means the database which is available on my own machine. So that database will have its own connection string. Now I wanted to deploy my changes somewhere on the cloud, on QA server, on dev server, or on production server. So every server will have its own database, and obviously that every database will have its own connection string. So that's why we wanted to make it configurable. Okay. So whatever configuration values you want, you can add them into app setting.json file. How to add that? Go here and then add connection string section like this. Okay, connection strings has one property, default connection, and in this you can add your connection string. Okay, so connection string can have some, let's do one thing. Let's take one dummy connection string, right? MS SQL server connection string. Go here, go down. Yeah, we can just use this one. Copy and go to your project. Paste all the sections. Like I wanted to use data source, right? Data source means your server IP, server name. Okay. Next, oh, let me copy into the notepad first. Data source, then semicolon, initial catalog. It means your database name. Then, if you don't have any username password, you can use integrated security SSPI. Copy this, go to your database, paste here. Okay. Now you should have SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, you can install it. I already told you how to install that, right? You can just search on the Google, download MS SQL, install that, and then download Management Server. Okay, Management Studio, then install that. So I just open that SSMS, wait for it. Okay, so this is your server name. I'm just sharing that screen as well. Okay, this is your SSMS, and here this is your server name. Copy this name, go here and add that name into data source here. Replace it just like this. Okay, I wanted to keep my database name as library db. Okay, capital B. So I wanted to keep this name. So it will create a new database with this name. And as I do not have any username and password, I can use Windows authentication. Click on the connect. You can see it is now connected, and you can see the database list by expanding this accordion. Here we are having 3 DB, Talendo Track, Test DB, EMP DB. Now I wanted to create library DB. Okay. So as I mentioned, you don't have to create the database and table here in the SSMS. You can just create them by using the .NET code. Okay, using the entity framework code. So make sure whatever connection string you have written, that should be accessible. Okay, so this is your server, this is your database name. Now let's close this file as well. Go to the DP context class. Now your next step should be create the database. How to create the database? Sorry, before that, in your startup.cs file or in your program.cs file, you have to go here and configure the DB context class. Okay, so there is a confusion. Some projects having the startup.cs file, some projects do not have it. What is the difference? Okay, so I will tell you. If you are using .NET Core 3.0 or 5.0, 3.1, these versions uses the startup.cs file in order to register your dependencies, connection strings, and middlewares. Now, in the .NET 6 onward, all the version not using any startup.cs file. Instead of that, in this newer version, whatever you are doing in the startup.cs file, you can do it in the program.cs. Okay, so you can see this comment provided by Microsoft, add services to the content. So this will, here you will have to actually register your dependencies. Okay, and you can see this again, configure the HTTP request pipeline. Here onward, you can just write or use your middlewares or your dependencies. Okay, so these two sections in the startup.cs file, there were two functions, configure and configure services. But now in the program.cs file, in the same file, you can write the both the things. Okay, now let's register the db context file into your program.cs file. How to register that? Just go here, builder dot services dot add db context. Okay, so this service we need to add. What is your db context name? My db context name is library db context. Okay, in this you will have some options. Okay, and then arrow, and here you will actually register your db technology. Same thing which we are trying to do in the db context class. You can do like this: options dot use SQL server, and in this you will have to provide the connection string. Okay, now where is the connection string? How to get that connection string? So connection string is available into app.setting.json file, and you can read this app.setting.json file by using the configuration class, configuration interface. So if you do like this, builder dot configuration, okay, dot get connection string, and then you can provide the name of your connection string. My connection string name is default connection. So I will go here and paste that. So basically this line will help you to register the dependency of your db context class into your project, and that way you can have this object in any of the class, any of the service, anywhere. Okay, great. So we got the db context class dependency into the program.cs file. Now I just wanted to create the database by using the db context file. So in order to create the database, you will have to run some commands in the package manager console. So go to the command line here in the package manager, open the package manager console and write some commands here. So I will tell you the commands. First command is add migration. Okay, so go here, add dash migration, and the command name is, sorry, migration file can be initial create. I wanted to create the database, right? Add migration, initial create. So basically it will build your project. It will find where is the db context file. It will check if you have added the db context file reference in the program.cs. If yes, then what is the connection string? It will try to connect to that connection string. It will find your model classes. By using the model classes, it will create the database and it will create the tables and its response relationship and everything. You can see we have created the migration file. If you open that file, here you can read the code. What will happen if you apply this migration to your database? So basically, it will create a new table. You can see create table. The table will have this name. It will have these two columns, and primary key will be your ID column. Okay. Next thing is it will create another table that will have books name, which will have four different columns. Every column will have this string as a data type in varchar in the SQL, double in the C sharp, float in the SQL, integer in C sharp, integer in SQL. Okay, and this is your primary key, and it will also add the foreign key of your author table to your books table. Okay, and then if you de-apply this migration, it will just drop the both the tables. Okay, it will delete the tables, but I wanted to apply the tables, and also it has created the index to author id in order to improve the searching performance. Great. Now how to apply the migrations? If I go to this ssms, you can see in the ssms, if I refresh the databases, refresh here, there is no database with the name of library db. Okay, now I'm going to the Visual Studio. I will open the package manager console again. We will write one more command, update database, enter. Now if you run this command, it will apply the recent migration file to your database. You can see it is applying the changes, and it throws one exception, that is a connection was successfully established with the server, but error occur. What is the error? Certificate chain was issued by authority is not trusted. It means in your construct connection string, we need to add one more we can say field. Okay, that is trusted connection true or something. You will get the actual name. If you copy this error, paste it, and you can just get the actual error in the Stack Overflow. Go down. This is the actual error. If you add this property in your connection string, we are good to go. It should resolve that issue. Okay, go to the connection string. After the semicolon, add your new property and value. Now rerun the same command again. Okay, go to the package manager console, up arrow, enter. It will again try to run the same command, again try to connect with your database, and will apply the recent migration file. You can see it just provided us the done message. Done means it has successfully applied the migration file. If I go to the database now, and if I refresh the database, you can see library db has been created. Okay, if I expand this database, and if I expand the tables, there should be two tables. One is book table, second one is authors table. Okay, if you want to see the relationship in the books table, if you open the columns, the primary key is id, foreign key is author id. In the author section, there is no foreign key, but there will be one primary key. Okay, so this is exactly what we have written in a form of object oriented programming, and it has created the database as expected as per our script which we have written here in the db context file. So as I mentioned, db context file is your very important file. It is just the replica of your database in object oriented format. It has everything about your database. Okay, so this is how we can create the database by using the entity framework and ms sql and entity framework core. In the next session, we will learn how to do the CRUD operation with your tables. Okay, we just learn the DML operation, sorry, DDL operation, create the database, create the tables, create the columns, add the relationship. This is DDL. In the next session, we will learn about DML, means how to get the records, how to insert the record, how to update the records, how to delete the record. All those things we will learn in the next session. Okay, chalo. Thank you everyone.